This is Screencast, Chapters 6, 7, and 8, Part 1. In this section, we'll be covering mediums or media, drawing, painting, and printmaking. Now, mediums or media is the material and tools that are used by the artist to create the visual elements. These can encompass things such as charcoal, chalk, Conte crayon, pastels, pen, ink, etc. All drawing materials are based on pigment, and pigment is opaque, so remember that. They can be divided into two categories, a dry and a wet. Now, this particular image here is a medium that is a little unorthodox. It's push pins, your everyday push pins that you stick into a cork board. There you can see this piece is made up of red, yellow, and blue, your primary colors, along with the black and white push pins, and it's basically almost like a pixelated image or the pointillism. It's dots of color so that when you stand back it makes a portrait. So there is a video link here that is attached to this that is the artist talking about his work and showing his work and how it is created. I highly suggest that you look at that on the PowerPoint. That is the regular PowerPoint. You're going to watch the video links. The screencast, you're going to hear the lectures over the top of the PowerPoints. So here you can see another example of how this actually works. The dots of color, and then when you stand back, the further back you get, the more it just optically mixes in your eyes. Another medium, a little unorthodox, is junk. I can remember when I was in art school in undergraduate, there were a couple of different courses you could take, and we chose the classes generally by what our pocketbooks can handle. And I tended to take the teachers that did the dumpster diving. So here you can see a piece of artwork that is made up of basically junk, found objects, and recycling those into artwork. Here's another example of something that's very similar to that, and on the right hand side you can see a close-up of the lips, so you can see what is making up some of this image. You know, you have Lego pieces, buttons, those kinds of things that we're taking and making up this mosaic portrait. Now, crayons. We've all done crayons growing up as kids, and this is taking that same idea as the push pins and using the crayons. One of the bad things about some of the materials or the mediums that you're seeing that are unorthodox is the longevity life of that object. So in other words, you're not going to have the longevity when it comes to crayons. Why? Because it's made out of wax. Not only could it melt if it's in direct sunlight, but also this thing's going to collect a lot of dirt and a lot of dust, and it's not going to have the integrity that some other art materials will have. This one is one that you see basically the same idea, but using toast. We all have a certain value or certain color or tone that we want our toast to be. So this is kind of showing a value scale and making up the eye out of basically pieces of burnt toast. This again, unorthodox material. The bad thing about this is going to attract rodents. So not a very good idea as far as a material. Interesting, same thing with this. This is sugar that has been poured out onto a black piece of paper, and then they've basically pushed it around with a paintbrush and made these portraits. Very neat idea, but another problem with this, aside from rodents and things like that, is that you're not going to be able to keep this. It's not going to be able to be something that's hung up on the wall. It has to stay flat. So not likely that we're going to be able to keep these things around. This is kind of one that I do in my Design 1 class. We deal with value scales of that dark to light. This artist has chosen to use coffee. So for those of you who are coffee drinkers, you're very passionate about it. Here you can see that building up of the value of coffee. In my class, they use ink or lipstick. It just depends upon the artist. Again, dirt. We've looked at this guy who does the dirt on the backs of cars and dealing with the values and drawing that way. This is one that I never thought of, and I know most people think of artists and drugs and all of those things, but I'm completely not that person. I didn't even know drugs came with little designer emblems on them, like a Nike symbol or the Superman symbol. This is one that it's interesting. It's the same idea as the others with the pixelated images, although I myself would think that the drugs are going to be worth more than what the artwork could ever be. So again, why? This one's a little weird. This one is one that the artist took and made a plaster cast of his own head and face. And what he did was he actually came along and he would every now and then come and drain some of his own blood and fill up the mold, and to where the mold is blood of himself. So kind of weird, but not that crazy when we think about the art world. Now this is what we normally think of traditionally as artwork, right? Materials, piece of paper and a pencil. So this is a normal type of artwork that we would see. Pencils range in a wide range of value, and when you see on the side of your pencil, most of you have a 2B pencil there. That's your average pencil, but as you can see, as you go up in number on the B range, the pencil is softer, so therefore it is darker. If you go into the H range, the lead's actually harder, and sorry about that, I started coughing. If you go into the H level and the higher the number is, the harder the lead, so therefore the lighter the line. And it also scratches the surface, which is not good. And there's even others that are on the scale here that are even darker, like the EEs and the EBs. Those are not even on the scale. Harder pencil to find. So this is taking that average pencil rendering and trying to make it interesting. And that's one of the big challenges artists have, is taking something that is a norm, like just a basic pencil drawing, and how do you make it something new and interesting where people are going to be like, oh, wow, like I've never seen that. So this is a pretty good example of that. But this is the kind of the average of what we see, isn't it? We see basic portraits and things like that. Yeah, it's done pretty good, but I mean, it's not anything that's going to flash and dazzle anyone. This is kind of an interesting image where the artist has taken the paper, and this is actually the corner of a room. So that shark is placed on the corner of a room, and by wrapping that paper around the wall in this 90-degree corner, you actually get that optical illusion of the whale is entering the shark's mouth. Now this is an example of a colored pencil, and most of you, I would say, have played around with a colored pencil. It's pretty good. One of the things that artists have to deal with that most people don't think about is the texture of the surface that they are working on. And all surfaces have a texture, whether it's smooth or it's rough or whatever it is. But you probably have noticed when you just write on a piece of paper, it kind of scumbles or skips across the paper to where it has little white flecks or static in it. That's what we're seeing here with this colored pencil. It's pretty good, but it's nothing outstanding. This is where the artist actually does more what's called a burnishing technique, which is taking the colored pencil and laying it on thick and heavy to where it's more like a paint. It's a painterly look to it. Now this is ink, and this is ink that is done in two ways. Ink can be considered in the dry or the wet medium. So of course the pencil and the charcoal and all of those are in the dry medium. It's a very dry material. But ink is one of those that lays over into both. Why? Because you can use the ink and draw regular line work, but you can also take ink and water it down and apply it with a paintbrush and washes. So therefore it covers both the dry and the wet. Now charcoal, again, this is the earliest surviving of charcoal examples would be on the cave walls. So cavemen using burnt sticks to draw on the walls. How is charcoal used or made? It is normally made by carbonizing wood in airtight chambers. The preferred wood for most artists are willow. Not that they're all using it for final pieces, but willow goes on really lightly, so therefore a lot of artists will use it under other materials. So it is excellent for working on large scale because you can cover a lot of ground. It was and is still used for fresco cartoons. Now when we get into the painting section, you'll get to see the frescoes paintings. Now there's disadvantages to this is that it's messy and it erases easily. I would also like you to take a look at page 149 in your text. Figure 6-7 is an example of a charcoal drawing in your text. So this is what charcoal we would actually look, you know, the wood that is burnt wood that's left over from a fire. And here's some examples of different types of charcoal. The charcoal that you would see on the right hand side, that's the kind that we see in the airtight chambers. That's going to give a darker, richer, velvety black color, those block shaped ones. Now the round ones are what we see as the willow, so made from burnt willow vine. And that's going to give you the lighter lines. Now this is just an average charcoal. This is what I would expect most of my incoming freshmen into college to do. How this particular piece is done is you would of course have a white piece of paper and they would take the stick of charcoal and cover the entire paper with the charcoal, rub it in to where it's a smooth velvety black, and then what they do is they take and actually draw in with their eraser. So they're taking the charcoal away, which is why it's called a subtractive technique. So this is an average charcoal piece that I would see for most, you know, 17, 18, 19-year-olds coming into college. But it lacks drama, and that's one of the things that you guys need to know about art is to grab someone's attention, it has to have an impact, it has to have drama. So this would actually be something that would be more dramatic, getting someone's attention. And what you're looking at here is of course subject matter, but the technique is done extremely well. But what we're looking at as far as value and the impact is we have really strong blacks, we have some really sharp whites, and a few gray tones in between. That's what we're looking at as far as getting that contrast going, that really good impact. These are very good, beautiful examples of that, and they're both done in charcoal. Now, chalk and crayon, the main difference between the two of these is the substance that holds the particles of pigment together, which is called the binder. So in this particular exam, you're going to have some definitions, okay? So make sure you're paying attention to these definitions like binder. So chalk is considered to be a non-fat binder. So a good example of this is blackboard chalk. You know, you write on the blackboard, but it's kind of crumbly, powdery at times. Now then you have crayon, which is a fatty binder, and like think of your kids' Crayola crayons. That's the kind of binder we're talking about, more waxy based. Now Conte crayon, most of you I'm assuming have never heard of, and this kind of lies in between the chalk and the crayon. It has a little bit more binder in it. Page 143 in your text and page 150 in your text, you'll find some examples of some Conte crayon. Now the three most common natural chalks are red, black, and white. So this is what we normally think of when we think of chalk, like sidewalk chalk kind of thing. Now these are some good examples of people using sidewalk chalk outside on the sidewalk. Not your everyday sidewalk chalk art. This is where the artist has actually taken the sidewalk chalk and added more of an oil and a binder to it. It makes the color a little bit more richer, more painterly, so more vibrant. Now crayons, this is your Crayola crayons, so we're all familiar with this material. These are some pretty good examples of these. I mean, all of us have messed around and had to have crayons growing up in school, so pretty good. This is a Crayola crayon piece, and I know it looks like a photograph. It's an amazing piece of art, but what we're looking at here is the artist is basically taken and kind of used it as a melted technique and done this crayon piece. So amazing piece of work. Now a colored pencil is basically a wax-based medium with pigment in it, but it's a little bit harder than your average colored Crayola crayon, and the pigment count is a lot higher, so it's a lot more vibrant. So you can see here, got some beautiful colored pencil work, and this is using it in that burnish technique, so you're not seeing any of that texture come through the paper. Okay, I'm going to end this screencast on this one. We'll pick up on this image in the next part 2.